Moment. Setting up meeting for YouTube Live. Done redirecting to YouTube. 3, 2, 1. We are now live on YouTube. This is wonderful. Okay. And then I'm going to click on record on this computer. Record. Put on this computer. Recording. Okay. 3, 2, 1. We're beginning. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to FractalU.com, FractalField.com. I am Dan Winter, and we are joined, of course, by Tufan Guven, our host. And this evening, we have Juan Schlosser. Welcome, Juan, all the way from Bali at 5 a.m. They got up early. We stayed up late. It's wonderful. It's working. We're here. Hi, Juan. How you doing?
Hi. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Thanks for the interactions.
Great. And we had talked about that Josh Geiger might join us too. Josh, are you there? Or
Hey, I'm here.
Oh, good. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so I will add a pin for you. That's wonderful. Okay, so just briefly, do we have any announcements, Tufan? One announcement that I have is that an additional event is now planned and will appear in the FractalU.com calendar. Last event, June 2, Sunday, normal 2 p.m. New York time, will be Mauricio from Uruguay, Paraguay, Major Therapy Center, leading a group of Therapy plasma practitioners discussing yoga and support for Therapy plasma healing practitioners, yoga and the breath work in conjunction with plasma therapy. We have an amazing event with Mauricio on June 2. So that's an announcement. And the other announcement, I guess, Tufan, is that our rooms are virtually full for
Sure. Before that, let's announce next week's lectures. We will be meeting with Iris Husing and Alexa Elokian. We'll talk about bliss in children, working with children, seeing with eyes closed, and brainwaves, flamingmind.com/outer vision. That's next week. Same time as this week, which is 5 p.m. New York time and 11 p.m. Paris time. One of our presenter will be joining us from Bali again. And another note is about our September event, that our rooms are fully booked as of now, and we may still have some openings for approximately 5 or 6 people. So if you would like to be included in the waiting list, please email to info@geometricmodels.org, and we will add you to the waiting list. And I believe there will be some openings soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Tufan. Yes, that's our South France conference, September 19. Website fractalfield.com/2024. Thank you. And by the way, that next week's event with Alexa, that's Josh's wonderful partner with their wonderful family there in Bali, working with Juan. And I'm sure we're going to hear stories. And Josh has an amazing family. They're amazing. And Alexa's working with kids and seeing without eyes and all kinds of cool stuff. So that's wonderful. So that was the announcement for FractalU.com. Glad everybody's with us. So to introduce Juan and Josh briefly, so Juan Schlosser is the original hero who, he was also helping in Bali there with the amazing international projects, and was building bamboo amazing structures and temples and demonstrating biologic architecture at a very sophisticated level. And then Juan was able to set up to measure the life force in those buildings, the original project being to correlate when a building had the right capacitance, when there were significant harmonics of coherent low voltage, the building was actually building its own electric field, measuring the weak electric field and showing the harmonic inclusiveness, and predicting then the difference between a building that would cause a seed to grow because it was implosive capacitor versus a building with metal in that will not cause a seed to grow. And Juan made those measurements and compared it with seed growth. He was incredibly brave and disciplined in doing that work, in addition to his amazing architecture. And also Juan is something of an expert at implosion in water aircrete theory. Juan is actually set up to do work with measuring things like, can you get a spark from a water drop, as Schauberger did, and many very interesting implosion and water measurements. So in my view, Juan is something of a electrical engineer in many ways too. And then we met Josh, who met Juan in Bali, and Josh moved from Texas, and he's had his own biologic architecture project, and they've teamed up and done amazing things in India and elsewhere. And we're about to hear about their work in biologic architecture in depth. And thank you very much for being here. That's the intro. Juan and Josh, please take it away.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for all of that. Josh will
Yeah,
start,
amazing.
actually.
Amazing. Yes, thank you so much. It's an honor, a major honor to be here. I know that Juan and I have both been major students of Dan Winter and all things fractal physics for many years. Actually, a similar time frame. That's kind of our foundation of how we came together, and was our common ground was similar studies. And as Dan was saying, that I've been a natural builder and biologic builder in the United States for about 10 years, and Juan has taken it so much to the next level with the precision in geometry and just the incredible designs that he's been doing in Bali with this what we call path curve geometries, opposing path curve geometries, which I'll share a little bit of a presentation to give an intro that Juan will really just elaborate on, present some of the measurements, and go deep into his discussion or his presentation on the India project. So,
And
I will just
to mention that Juan's website is bioarc.co if people want to see the background. That was also on the website. Yes, go ahead. So you're going to do an intro, and then Juan has his slideshow.
Exactly. And so I've got a slideshow also just to start off, and I'm also present on the dome project that we're doing in Canggu. Can y'all see my?
Yes, we're seeing your slideshow. Yes.
Amazing.
Looks good.
Okay, great. So yes, we are BioArc. We're a biologic architecture and design and build firm. And Juan has been rolling on his own for the last decade or so here in Bali, and then I've been doing my own thing in the United States. And then within the last couple of years, we actually came together due to this amazing common ground of fractal physics and vortex mathematics, and just having similar mentors, one of which being Dan, our hero. And we came together, we had this incredible opportunity to actually initially do a project. It's called the Phi Camp project, and it's out in Canggu. It's for a really big project, of which we are a small portion, and our portion is the biologic design portion. So I'm not going to teach all about fractal physics, because that's what this whole FractalU is about. But we came essentially in biologic design and biologic architecture, we are very aware of charge dynamics in our reality, in our world. And we live in this ocean of charge. That's important because this charge has the ability to accelerate towards center and implode when in golden mean geometries, as we see in nature everywhere. That golden mean that implosion creates these beautiful negentropic fields, which is the regenerative organizing aspect of life. Golden mean makes that possible.
Beautiful.
And it's important because we're dielectric beings. We have this weak electric field around our body. We have this aura. And so we want to live in charge-rich environments. And for those charge-rich environments and our structures to breathe natural charge. And so one of the main things we got to do for that is to get out of the way and stop destroying the charge with all the smelted metal and synthetic materials and electrosmog and Wi-Fi and all that. So we need to create solutions to that. Biologic architecture is a matter of building in as natural a way as possible. And it's an optimization game, because we can do site select, we can do energetic mapping of the grounds, which these are all things that BioArc actually does. Is we do energetic maps of our building sites to find the magnetic cross lines. We call them power points for optimal selection of the building site. And then with proper selection of the materials, which is these natural materials where that fractal geometry is already in place within the grid or the network of the materials. Proper material selection, high dielectric materials, and then optimized geometry allow us to create charge-rich environments where we're getting these beautiful Schumann harmonics within the spaces that Juan then corroborated those measurements with seed germination trials where we had increased seed germination vigor and rapid growth than in compared to conventional structures. So this is just a description. We're wanting to create spaces that have a similar reading or measurement as that of a healthy ecosystem. We want those rich Schumann harmonics. We want charge accumulation as compared to, here we see just this conventional structure of smelted steel beams on concrete foundations with rebar. And like Dan likes to say, this is like a hospital. This is a good place to go die. Or it's actually a bad place to go die because you'd rather go and you'd rather carry your plasma through death and carry that memory. This is gonna deplete the charge, disperse it, throw it away.
Exactly.
And we have a major issue with this type of building. One of the most popular places to live is these major city complexes. So this biologic architecture is it's so important, or I call it biologic design is so important for this next chapter of humanity in becoming healthy again. Because we're in a major situation right now. And this doesn't only apply to architecture, it applies to agriculture, it applies to even economics, it applies to the potential of free energy and healing devices and all this. So bioarchitecture, I've already briefed on this, but use of specific material, site placement, and geometry to increase charge capacitance inside a structure. Creating spaces that are similar to a forest in terms of charge concentration, measurable and repeatable, and verifiably biologically beneficial based upon multiple trials with seed germination. And we know that this is healthy for people. This is why we do this. It's healthy for people. It's healthy for nature. So this is some of the stuff I was doing back in California. I was building straw bale homes. This is with, you can see stone foundations, straw bale homes, clay plasters, lime plasters. And then here's another example of just a reciprocal roof with these beautiful timbers taken from the actual site.
Mm.
So you can see I was getting some things right with the natural building side of things, using the natural materials and just allowing for that charge to breathe. And then Juan on his side was really dialing in the geometric precision, which I'd like to just brief on with the FICAMP project. This is the 10 dome project that we're doing in Canggu for a big project called Nuanu City. Beautiful conceptual design by Juan. There's 8 domes here because they added 2 more, and then these 2 towers up at the top.
Oh.
Here's another of the conceptuals. And then here's a couple of them. There's 4 of them in reality. So we've been a year. The whole process is actually much faster than that, but you know how it goes with building projects and budgets and just they have a pretty bureaucratic system. And so we have done quite well, all things considered. Here's one of them close up.
You guys worked extremely hard.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And this was a debut of our modular system, which Juan really pioneered in the design side of things. I call myself the systems architect and came up with a lot of recipes and how to implement this into 3D, into reality. But as far as like the actual conceptual and a lot of the designs for the panel structure, the plans for the bamboo framing, the plans for the universal hub. You see, we call it the uni hub up here, which is how we connect this modular system together. That is the genius of Juan, and I was honored to come in and pull it to the next level of manifestation, or build the real world building in this reality. And this modular system is incredible. This is the opposing path curve geometry technology that Juan has really pioneered in a lot of ways. And that's where you can see we have multiple golden mean path curves. And that whenever you do, just like a sunflower, you have curves going inwards in one direction and then curves going in the other direction. When you start to cross those and then you connect those cross points, when you do that with multiple axes, you get a very strong and beautiful architecture.
Yeah, and a good implosion curve for the charge to conjugate too.
Yes, and that was the inspiration behind it all. As we were looking at nature, we were looking at plants and flowers, and how can we create this into a working geometry that is practical to build. That was a big one as well, because humans are, we are so creative and ingenious in so many ways. But if you were to go and try and, like, as a builder, go with an angle finder and tape measures and even setting out your foundation perfectly. Sure, 2D is not so bad, but when you start going in multiple dimensions, it gets very complicated very quick. And within a few degrees of allowance for error, this type of structure is just not possible without this type of modular system that Juan and I have pushed forth. And so it allows for us to designing in AutoCAD, designing our software programs, to then make our individual components of the structure up to the proper scale, to make all the angle markings and everything on the actual uni hub in our connector system, and then to go and to put it into place piece by piece. And what it ends up coming out as is an actual accurate, damn near perfect geometry.
This is gorgeous. Let's be sure to leave time for Juan here. Juan prepared a show as well.
Absolutely. I'm going to be finishing up here in the next 10 minutes or so.
Oh, that's a great view of the building, the build itself. Wow.
And so, yes, it was actually an interesting process that we went through. As we've initially started trying to build it from the ground up in compression. And so you can see it's cool looking from the top. Inside is a mess of scaffolding. And we're talking a need for precise geometry. And the bamboo builders of Bali, they're more so kind of like, oh, yeah, that looks good. So we had a lot of challenge in the first build. And by the grace of God, we got it put together. But we developed a much more sophisticated way of building that. And that was with, and you can see here's a better look at the scaffolding.
Wow. Amazing.
Here's our guys making the panels. We're using a very cool material called bioresin, high dielectric, high UV resistance, what appears to be an incredible premier roofing material that we're really pioneering some cool technology with.
Oh.
Okay, and then here's just to demonstrate the fractality. You can see our hub here in comparison with one of the finished domes.
Oh.
You can see we just have that repeating geometry, that path curve geometry. Here's what it looks like from the inside. You can see the framing pieces coming together, individual bamboo arches connected by domes and hubs and connectors.
Beautiful. Little flower in the middle.
Absolutely. And then here's the tower. We call it the EndoLift 3000. Because we built it out of bamboo. We needed a solution. A crane would be the easiest solution, but we needed something that was inexpensive. This is maybe a $500 lift with 3 hoists. Allows us to lift this thing into place, which is actually incredibly light because it's all bamboo. It's less than 500 kilos once the roof is on.
Oh. Amazing.
Here's one doing some more of everything's precise. We're following plans, and we're following and marking everything very precisely. And that's how it all comes together, trusting the process, and then it comes out at the end. You can see here's a finished frame, and you can see it's self-standing because we actually took down the tower now. Once the frame's put together, the entire structure is very, very strong.
Oh,
Here's a above shot. You can see that path curve geometry very well here.
good visuals.
And there's a few things that we had to discover that were super important when we were building this, because sometimes we are trying to put these connectors into the hubs and we're like, the angle's not quite right. Well, as you go, you discover that basically all the diameters from hub to hub need to be right. All the heights need to be right. And there was just a process, so you can see we have these temporary rebar rings in place to make sure that the hubs are not going left or right, that they're staying in the proper diameter. And once we really figured out all these things over the first couple domes, the whole process, we build it in 2 weeks now. It's very quick, very accurate. One more from above.
Lovely.
Me proudly standing on top.
What rated?
And then here's one of the finished ones. It's just a quick walkthrough so you can see the interior once it's finished. Oh, this is my music.
Yeah, see, the music doesn't come through, unfortunately. Not playing on, unfortunately.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah. So this is essentially part of it, like a temple complex, right?
It is, and they're going to be using it for a retreat center, and healing events and that sort of thing.
Oh, amazing. It's beautiful. Beautiful. Oh, that's a real. Good place to sleep, I think.
So Josh, I think these structures must be in similar strength compared to geodesic domes, right?
Yeah, I would say so. Similar. It's obviously it's got it's a different type of rigidity,
Yes.
just due to the fact that you have the geodesic is the same geometry repeating. But in what Juan and I have noticed is that it is extremely strong once you get the final pieces installed.
Mhm.
But
And
go ahead.
well, Bucky called it a vector equilibrium, but Bucky never knew that you needed live high dielectric materials. So Bucky should be impressed. I was there with Bucky. So I think you guys are the next level. It's wonderful.
Dan, we call it pleomorphic geodesic domes because they can change shape. But also that we cannot produce perfect spheres with this geometry. We can only produce perfect harmonic golden ratio path curve domes.
Yes, and actually, we
So
don't
they're
want
energetically optimized.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
spherical
right.
is not desirable because it doesn't really implode capacitance. Golden ratio egg shape does, so it's perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
Beautiful.
And that's one of the huge intentions behind it. But once the actual structure is complete and we have all the rings in place, and then when the panels especially are on there and everything has now been triangulated because they're connected at 3 points, so each panel is connected to 3 hubs. It's so strong. Like I can jump up and down on it. I can hang from the rafters like a monkey. It's basically hurricane proof. In fact, there were some structures nearby during a very strong tropical storm that the roof was blowing off and our domes made it through. So that was the first test, and we could strut around proudly like, yes, just as we presumed.
That's wonderful. Fabulous. Josh, fabulous.
Yeah, and then the final piece that I just want to say is that the importance of the biologic architecture is incredible in itself. And then in order for biologic architecture and biologic design for living spaces to really thrive, environmental restoration is a massive part of that, because we need to put these structures in charge-rich environments. So that's something I'm also passionate about as a somebody who has a degree in horticultural sciences and soil regeneration, somebody who's very passionate about that sort of thing. That's something I'm very excited about also in our designs is mandala gardens, labyrinths, just environmental restoration and preservation in general. So on that note, I will pass it over to Juan, and he's going to pick up with more delicious biologic architecture measurements and the projects in India.
Oh, that was fabulous, Josh. Thank you so much.
My
Gorgeous,
pleasure.
gorgeous.
Let me
Good. Now let's make space for Juan here, the grandfather of it all there. Okay, so I'm going to pin you now, Juan. Go ahead, please. Here we go. Pin. There we go. Okay. This is Juan's screen now.
Okay, what's it called?
Mhm. Thank you so much, Josh. Well, what a great team you guys are. So Juan is just setting up his slideshow there.
Okay, 1 second, because
Too many windows.
yeah. Well, I just share again because I have to share the right screen.
Yeah, to select the right one.
1 second.
It's 5 a.m. there. You guys are doing pretty good for waking up.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
here we go.
Yep, that looks good. Looking great. Wonderful.
Okay.
Juan
Okay.
Schlosser, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you for all the introductions. And let's begin. So a little bit about my background. I would like to share with you guys how I actually came across the work of Dan Winder. And that was around 2018, something years ago. I was in India and I came to this beautiful temple, which is the Lotus Temple, which interestingly, we are building now a Lotus Stupa in India. So I thought it was an interesting way to introduce this. So I came to this temple and essentially I was blown away by the architecture. It was beautiful. And when I came to the interior and I went to the center, I closed my eyes and meditate for a bit. And I was totally taken away by this amazing energy that I could sense in the center of this structure. So I found that was something very unusual. So I basically walked to other point of the temple a little further from the center. I closed my eyes, and I felt something different. It's sort of like the volume was turning down. Then I went to the outside, closed my eyes, meditate, and felt something totally different. Then I came back to the center and repeat the operation a few times to be totally convinced that there was something happening in the center. So after I experienced this, I was very curious. I already designed some buildings for festivals, in fact. And I just came to my mind to type in Google, what is the relationship in between consciousness and architecture? So this is how I came across the work of Dan Winter. And after that, I was in Mexico, and I think I wrote you an email, Dan, and you responded. I thought that you were going to take a while to respond, and you actually took just 5 minutes or something like that to just get back to me. And I think I told you that I found a lot more than just, and a lot more answers than understanding what was happening inside of that building. So in the middle of that structure, there is where harmonic inclusiveness is happening.
Right, the implosion.
The implosion effect, right? Yes. So that's where charge density is the greatest, where the climax of the building really is creating that implosion of charge. So also a little bit about my background. This is the work of my father.
Pine cones, pine cones.
Pine cones and conjugate mirrors. So he was doing a sculpture, and these are spirals, sculpture. He used this language, specifically spirals. He used using pine cones. There was a lot of geometry, circuit geometry in his work. So this language has always been very familiar to me. This is also when I came across the work of Dan, I saw something very familiar from the beginning.
It was like in your blood from your dad. Cool.
I guess it was written in destiny somehow. Anyway, let's keep going. So I'm gonna present you the measurements. I did other lectures where we elaborate here a lot more. I think we're gonna focus a lot more on projects and in pictures. But in any scenario, I'd like to give you a little background so we can understand the measurements that I'm gonna be showing you. So we love Professor Philip Callahan, which pioneered some of these measurements, and then basically Dan and his colleagues took this to the next level.
That's right. It was Dr. Phil Callan who personally showed me how to measure life force in a tree, actually. That's how we started, exactly.
Right. So let's just describe that briefly so our audience can understand a little bit where we're going with this. So what Philip Callahan did, basically, he was measuring the field effect of living trees. So he was a radio engineer. He was using a spectrum analyzers and amplifiers. And then he measured the field of a tree. He realized that there was a very specific pattern on the spectrum of the frequencies of these trees. And what he found is that this was the Schumann frequency cascade that he could measure in the trees. So he realized that when a tree was healthy, was actually these frequencies were very present, and the amplitude of the frequencies was very strong. Where tree was actually diseased, then those frequencies will not be there. So there was something about the living tree that was telling us that there is a connection there with the Schumann harmonic cascade. So then he went to a village in the UK, and he thought and had the intuition that these houses somehow were playing a similar role than the trees were doing. So in this village, people were living long periods of time, maybe around 100 years or so. And when he put his spectrum analyzer in the house, he realized that the same frequencies were present. And this was, I guess, the beginning of biological architecture. And
That's right. That's right. He was using hemp fibers. Input to his oscilloscope was the amplifier, and we made that a lot more efficient. But he's the guy that actually noticed that the house had to be basically charge implosive, and so he pioneered the way. Then, of course, we learned the geometry of the perfected harmonics, that the Schumann cascade is actually a conjugator.
Right. So yeah, the tree and the house in this case are acting like capacitors, right?
Like implosive, exactly.
Implosive capacitors specifically, right?
Exactly.
It's not just a capacitor. And then so it basically is tapping into this electric potential that exists between the atmosphere and the Earth.
Yes.
And this is what we can see here. This is a little graph that we create for one of our projects for Star Magic, where we show, the negative charge that is in the Earth, the positive charge that is in the atmosphere, and then where the capacitive plate will sit. So this is basically what will happen if there is no dielectric. And this is what's happening when there is a dielectric, then the dielectric becomes electrically polarized, and then it's able to store this capacitive charge, which then implodes within the building. So this is just, I think, like very basic concepts for people to understand, and then we can move into our measurements.
Basically, every living seed is alive because it's centripetal, it's charge imploding. So that implosion is life itself.
So I just put this here. We did a conference in Nuanu. If people want to watch this, it's a BioArch presentation, fractal architecture at Nuanu Festival. Josh and I did this presentation. I think we elaborate a lot of these slides here. So I'm gonna bypass all of those slides that we show, and we're gonna go almost directly to the measurements and showing some of our designs. These are designs I did for the new project. This is a project we call Sanctuaries of Ascension. We were trying to get going here in Bali.
Super beautiful. God, beautiful.
So and also pictures, and this was actually, that's just like one of our presentations, which I kind of find it very interesting. Is this book, The Dimensions of Paradise by John Mitchell, and I just found this sort of confirmation of all this stuff that we're talking about here. And then also it says there is two forms of natural energy were involved, one terrestrial, the other one from the atmosphere. Through the ritual fusion of these two elements, a spirit was generated and spread like an enchantment from the temple, bearing fertility to the surrounding countryside and pervading pervading it with an atmosphere of peace and happiness. In terms of spiritual technology, maybe you have involved the fertilizing of the earth spirit by the positively charged energy channeled through the lighting rods from the temple roof. The Old Testament Chronicles tells of a life-giving streams that rose beneath the temple and flowered towards the four corners of the earth. So this is just like a poetic description of what we just kind of presented in a very brief way.
We spent a lot of time with John Michel, his view over Atlantis. I pioneered his tour of the United States. And he originally established the sacredness of the dimensions that the British foot versus the meter, and how charge collapses actually dimensions, sacred dimension.
Yeah, so yeah, this is very interesting to this conversation, and I find it like a beautiful confirmation, right? Of
yes, exactly
what we're talking about here.
Yes, I mean he really didn't, he thought it was a dimensional issue, but he didn't understand it electrically. So we took it to that next step.
More designs. This is a dome we build as a spa. If I have time, I will show you this later, but this is an obelisk. This is like a tuning fork that they were using for Nuano. We designed a harmonic grid, and this was we were planning to build 25 of these things in different power spots throughout the whole landscape.
Because we're just making a documentary now with Tony Rodriguez about obelisks and remote viewing. So to be continued.
Interesting. So yeah, just a little bit more of the science. A tree, like a fractal capacitor, very similar to an organ accumulator, in fact, where you have dielectric and conductive sort of layers. So it's creating also an asymmetrical capacitor that then is able to implode this energy. And you could say that probably this is how the tree is pumping the water up the yes. It's creating an anti-gravitational effect, in fact. So yeah, a tree is really a device, a fractal capacitor. So is I always say, like, we just want to mimic trees on the way they create energy, so we can harvest that potential in architecture.
Beautiful. So
more of our work. This is in Sasha's villa, actually, in Bali, where the New Earth project was founded.
And we should say Sasha Stone, New Earth Project. That's really how Juan got this started there, right?
Yeah, we did a lot of work in New Earth Project. So just another slide about the science. I found this fascinating, Dan. I don't know if you have come across this book. This is A New Science of Heaven by Robert Temple. So I think this really tells you, like, what we're talking about here is not just a cloud of charge that is just floating there, and it has coherence, like it has holographic structure. It has when it's imploding, it's like creating coherence and self-organization. And this book basically talks about this bioplasma fields that exist within biology, and that bioplasma is you could say is the fifth state of matter, and is described as a biological field, and contains information. It contains is a superconductor. It has high conductivity, and in the cosmos also these bioplasma clouds also exist. They are called the Kordelinsky clouds. So they exhibit these self-organizing properties, coherence, emergence. So I open up the question. It's like, what we are thinking about here is like, are buildings able to create this kind of bioplasma clouds? And I think this is what biological architecture is aiming to. It's not just mere or simple charge. It has this implosive, self-organizing properties. And
yes, that the cloud of charge itself is the self-awareness you take with you at death, for example. Living plasma.
Right. So that's what temples are as well. Temples are living in a way. They have consciousness. There's a lot more than just charge or charge density. There is also this level of self-organization. So that's pretty much all the slides I have for the science, and now we're gonna go right away into the measurements. So we basically, I mean, this is the introduction. Like Dan, when he was developing this app, he called me in and he asked me to help him with this, and then so I basically have the honor to do the beta testing for the Flame in the Mind for measuring circuit space. So I took it very serious, and I went and did all these measurements. We actually created a 80 pages document where we measure 6 conventional buildings and 4 biological architecture environments, and then we collected all the data. Thank you.
Great work.
Yeah, and I think this is basically bringing the work of Philip Callahan to the next level, and it's a functional app. It's beautiful. Patrick did an amazing work as well there with the programming and the software and everything. And yeah, and I got the chance to do all these measurements. So
specifically the headphones, the headset, a brainwave headset, is picking up about 1 microvolt, or about a millionth of a volt, and it's measuring the weak charge field of its environment. So if you spectrum analyze that 1 microvolt like a brainwave, you can measure the life force in trees and buildings, which Callahan pioneered, but we really developed software to make it formal.
Right, and just to show our audience, like, you know, this is how I'm taking measurements. That's the muse, and then basically we put a high dielectric hemp fiber there. You have to wet it a little bit, so it works much better with a little wet with the saliva. And then you can think about it, the building itself is that. The building also dielectrically coupled with the ambient electrostatic potential that exists as we talk about it. So it's the same principle. In essence, the way that biological architecture is able to pick up on this harmonic inclusiveness. So
literally,
so this is
embedding in the Schumann.
Embedding in the Schumann. Like this tree over here. So this is a tree it's in one of our projects, in the Shambhala project in remote islands of Indonesia. So I like to bring this always in the beginning, because it's really, you know, this environment was absolutely pure. There was no electrical grid there. You can see the pictures here.
Gorgeous.
This is totally this place is like paradise. So I put the muse, Flame in the Mind, and I took these measurements, and you can see these beautiful, gorgeous harmonics everywhere here. And so this is a really good example. So let's keep going. So this is some slides which are basically like the main measurements, or the main examples that I would like to show you of the study we did. And then we didn't just use the Flame in the Mind. We also used the gaseous charge visualization, Dr. Koroskov, the BioWell. This is the Sputnik here, and this is designed to actually take measurements in environments. This is from biogeometry, which is just another, you know, correlation that we like to bring on. Here we will find the picture of the building that we are measuring, and we did a seed germination experiment.
So we did discuss with Korotkov directly, showing that what the Sputnik is measuring, which is actually simply whether the charge from that metal, that Sputnik, will dissipate permissively in the environment. So by making basically a Kirlian photograph of the metal device and seeing whether the capacitance has permission to distribute, and he measures the fractality then of the GDV, which is the footprint, the Kirlian footprint. So effectively, Korotkov was totally agreeing that our concept of harmonic inclusiveness in the spectrum analysis was a perfect correlate to whether there was fractality in the distribution efficiency from the metal device, essentially whether a spark has a place to go.
Right. It's also like bioplasma, and I think bioplasma becomes coherent, becomes a superconductor, and that's what allows charge capacitance to
literally yes.
Yeah.
Heaven is charge distribution efficiency.
Beautiful. So here we get into the measurements. This is the first building that we measured. This was just a conventional house, concrete, steel, like standards in our time, unfortunately. I treat this like this is basically the control group, is the lower in the measurements, and we can see what not to do in a way, right? So we can see how seed germination experiment was relatively small. There's not so much harmonic inclusiveness, and now in the GDB we will use this as a comparison of the different outputs of energy that of joules, in fact, that he uses. So this is the next space. This is another concrete house. This is on a second floor. So you can see pretty much the same thing on the spectrum analysis. The seed germination, it just looks a little different, but we'll see this later. And the GDB is telling us that these two structures have a very similar output of the joules of energy. So this is the first biological architecture design. This is one of the first domes I built, in fact, like 12 years ago. And this is in Akasha, as well as Sasha's house. So you can see how the seeds are already growing better. There is more harmonics on the spectrum analysis. And then the gas discharge visualization is already picking up more energy. You can see the graphs here as well. And this is our last example, where we can see the seeds here. Look at the root, how the roots have developed a lot greater. They're a lot bigger. They will have more weight, as we see later, and there's a little more harmonic inclusiveness, and it has a lot more energy according to the GDB. So this tells you something.
Basically, the charge in the space is able to breathe, and therefore the seed is able to grow.
Exactly. So this is about so we can see the exact correlation in between the sizes of the seeds and the weight, which before wasn't so clear. Now you can see it much more clear. Like look at this versus this. I mean, this is a tape measure, so this is all these pictures are at scale, and you can really see the relationship, including
this is where you can tell your kids, if you'd like to go to a school made of biologic material, your kids are going to grow like that also.
Mm-hmm. Healthier, more intelligent, more spiritually connected.
Disciplined work. Good work, Juan.
So more of our designs, more measurements. I like to show this. I think I shared this with you, Dan, one time. I was playing with this plate. So I have here a copper plate, and this is brass, and essentially this one is connected to this antenna, which is on the top of my roof, on my pagoda studio where I'm staying now. And this one is connected to there. This grounded. So this is a capacitor, and this is a dielectric. And inside here I have the muse. And I will show you measurements later, but what I want to show you here is essentially what I did is I took this plate and put the brass plate on the top of my head and this one on the bottom. And I meditate for a couple of hours. I'm a meditator. I meditate pretty much every day for 1 or 2 hours. So I have experience doing this, but I wanted to see if I could enhance my bliss. And after two hours, I put the muse, and this is what's happened. I was essentially like having a quite extraordinary bliss experience, which I think the muse was able to pick up. I mean, the muse, the flame in the mind, specifically, like the app, or the part of the section of the app that is used to measure brain waves. So this is I think is basically charge is a bilabel, because I have this, I mean, I'm sitting in between the plates of the capacitor, so I can have a stronger, and there's more
there's
charge
the alpha. Yeah, there's the alpha right there. That's where the alpha got big.
So yeah, this is it just totally went off the chart, and I was.
Yeah. It would have been good to turn down the gain a little bit at that point, I think, because you were off the charts.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So and here went down. All my hair was standing up, and yeah. So a building should do this, right? A building should have this
Right.
quality.
Create
So
that
you are
bliss.
living there all the time. All these charges are available to you, so it's helping you, feel better. Your health is improved. Your consciousness is.
That large green peak is the alpha, and that alpha is the Schumann main frequency around 8 hertz. So you're literally embedding yourself in the Schumann cascade, and that implosion is literally the physics of bliss, which is literally charge radiance. Beautifully done.
And then here we have the measurement, just electric with the plates, so you can see the harmonics here.
Right.
Yeah. So these measurements also are difficult because there's so much electrosmog,
Yeah.
electromagnetic pollution all around our environment. So
Yes.
it's always challenging. But,
It's a lesson that when you're measuring brain waves, you find it's better if you went down and turned off the main circuit breaker in the house. Well, guess what? Your bliss would be better too.
right, exactly. There's less interference, no?
Yes, exactly.
So this is also one of our products. This is what we call the Bioarc disc. So this is basically based on the MWO, Lakowski. So this is a seed germination experiment. It's kind of the same philosophy. We design in buildings like we design these antennas.
We say MWO means multi-wave oscillator, which means harmonic inclusive, which means implosive. Yes.
Right. So another more evidence of the work we are doing.
Gorgeous.
This is also with our Bioarc disc. This was done by Beta Austin. And then so you can see spring water after 1 minute direct exposure to Wi-Fi routers, spring water after direct exposure to Wi-Fi router, 1 minute while sitting on top of Bioarc disc.
I see. Interesting.
And this is just tap water, and then with the Bioarc disc. We also optimize the geometry of this dam.
Yeah, the picture on the right is gorgeous. She did very nice. Yes, so you can see the water really saw that. And remember, the center of water, that hydrogen bond is implosive. So water is a receptor for particularly the longitudinal component. And there, the picture on the right is a real dramatic.
More of our structures. This is all in Bali. This is Akasha. I designed with Sasha Stone. This was a project in Sumbawa, which is also in Bali. And let's get into India. I don't know how much time we have left, Dan, but
take another 5 or 10 if you like, and then a few questions as you like.
Okay, I have more projects that I could show, but I always have way too many slides. I think we can go through the India project, and let's see if we have enough time to go to another project. So this is basically Ananda Rishi Charan Paduka space, and then we designed this lotus stupa. I did this with my partner Mayank, which has this company, and also Vastu World. This is the location before it was developed. And then this is the presentation I put together for him. Some of the slides, this is not the entire presentation, but so we basically use like basically a way to scale it through Planck and also the qubit, which I think they embed. So I tried to find a measurement that was in between those two.
The qubit does embed, yes.
It does embed, we found that out, right? So, and then the whole geometry of the structure is following the path curve. So as you can see, like these are all the different path curve geometries using golden ratio proportions. And this is how the petals are created.
Wow.
Each one of those petals is very specific of the dimensions, the shape. This is basically the section of the petal is the path curve on itself. So it creates this series sort of like domes, one inside each other. That's sort of the concave. It's like concave mirrors or parabolic reflectors that are all like aiming to the center. I also see these petals like this is sort of like each one of them is like a stone circle. But rather than be all straight, they're actually all in sort of like golden angles as they move to the periphery.
But do you want
And
to
then
tell
there is a
people,
central dome.
do you want to tell people
Mhm.
what software primarily you use to implement your path curves, or
I use AutoCAD and Rhino.
ArchiCAD and Rhino? Yeah,
AutoCAD,
AutoCAD. I see.
AutoCAD.
And if people wanted to work with you on that, I'm sure that you could be very helpful.
Yeah, I explore a lot the path curve. I use it a lot for my designs. I think
It's
it's
powerful. Gorgeous.
and then also so the numbers of the petals, we have to use the iconography of this particular fate, which is the Jain tradition. So this is what we end up coming up the numbers. So it's 4, 8, 16, and 24. And these all have spiritual symbology on the Jainism. But yeah, we just have to accommodate to that. And so there is an iconography of the whole temple as well, which maybe my colleague Mayank can talk about this much more in depth than I can. But I just showed you the slides so you can have an idea a
But
bit of
it's
what
true.
we did
You
here.
start with the tetracubic geometry to stabilize, and then you wrap around that the golden ratio pent to implode. You start with tetracubic and climax with pent.
Right. So I think they both are complementary. They all have different qualities, right? So we use these numbers in bioarchitecture according to what we need to create. So it's good when they actually converge or they synergize in some way. So as you always teach, Dan, one is implosive, the other one is stores charge. So we're gonna have both, I think, and we
which is
utilize.
That's what the Anu was, the 7 spin, 5 spin, the perfect slip knot. The 7 spins was tetracubic, the 5 spins was dodecahedral.
Right. So this is all the symbology as well. As you see, this is very complex and very elaborate. This is the geometry of the petals that I originally suggested to do to create this kind of structural frames truss. And I will show you how everything ended up becoming. But so here, this is also inspired on the how is it called the Matrimandiri in India. So they have this this mirror that is up to the top and is basically channeling a ray of light that goes through the structure and then converts into the center. So in the center of the building there will be a sphere of glass or sphere. I mean, I would suggest an egg, of course. And then that egg will essentially like spread the light throughout the whole space. So they wanted to implement this, and I just basically come up with some concepts of how that could be implemented.
The Machamandir, interestingly, is actually the geometry of a virus. The way it would screw or embed itself into the membrane is actually the way a cathedral acts catheter from the blood embeds it into the earth grid. It's a beautiful and powerful and appropriate metaphor.
So they wanna implement that, and these are the preliminary renders. This is the conceptual work, which in this project we are specifically only the conceptual designer, and then Mayank is the lead architect, and he's basically implementing the project. And we are just advising throughout the whole way. And right now it's been built in India. And then so this is the conceptual work.
So construction has begun, or?
Construction has begun, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's on the process right now. Only the foundations are there. Some of the petals are being prefabricated.
I see. Did they accept the suggestion for basalt non-metallic rebar? Or that was too much for them?
We're going to talk about that. I mean, this is maybe a conversation. Lots of architects going to have this problem, which is basically the engineer. We are working with a top structure engineer from India.
Yeah.
And because he has the liabilities, he basically say that he has to compromise on these. the foundations are made of steel. So the pedals, unfortunately, are also made of metal. But the central stupa dome, we're gonna be able to make it out of bioepoxy and fiberglass rebar or basalt rebar.
Oh, that's good.
So this is kind of the compromise that we got into. So I like to explain this here. When they told me that this was something that they couldn't, because these pedals are like basically structural, very challenging.
Yeah.
So it's a cantilever structure. It's just flying there. So it was very difficult, or the engineer didn't want to take the risk to do it with basalt rebar and the way I suggested in the beginning. So he ended up making metal frames. So then what I suggested to them was like, okay, what if you take those petals and you turn them into sort of like antennas for the atmospheric energy, for the positive potential, because this whole thing is elevated. And then there will be antennas for sort of like negative charge earth energy antennas that then will be put into the ground below each one of the petals. And then all of these petals will be connected to a cable that then will run into the center of the dome, and it will be connected on the top of that glass egg, which is a dielectric. And then another set of wires will come down and connect to the bottom of the egg. So this is a schematic of all the cables and how they will connect to the central port. So this was basically my solution to try to a creative solution to try to overcome the fact that we have all this metal short-circuiting this dielectric potential between the atmosphere and the earth. And so I know it's a compromise, but we trying to come up with some creative solutions of how to sometimes overcome the limitations that the building regulations and engineers and all this, the construction industry sometimes is very challenging on certain aspects. So this was what we end up coming up with. And yeah, it's
I often tell the story of friends in Italy, Kudai in Torino. The architect required that it be steel rebar in the concrete in the basement, but for the rest of the building, 3 or 4 stories up, they allowed biologic rebar. And when you go in that building, you can feel the difference quite dramatically. Where the basement, where steel rebar is, you really you don't feel but in the upper floors where the rebar is biologic material, you definitely can feel more bliss for sure. It's quite specific.
Yeah. So yeah, I can sense it on structure.
Yeah.
Very, very dramatic on my sleep and my health, my consciousness. I'm sensitive enough to perceive this. And I hope more people will be more aware of this stuff, as we know, but unfortunately it's sometimes a little difficult to play. But yeah, this is why we're doing these lectures, I think, and trying to bring awareness on this whole topic. So yeah, this concept with the egg is basically a little bit the idea of maybe what the Ark of the Covenant was, right? That was located into the king's chamber, into sarcophagus. So the sarcophagus was basically the place where the Ark of the Covenant was charged. So this is where the egg essentially will be, and we still have to come up with the details of how all of this might be come together, and we're open to advice here. But that's basically the concept, and then essentially the light from the top of the building will strike the egg glass and then spread throughout the whole space. So this is the project in India, and so far where we're at with it, the conceptual design work. This is a video.
Yeah, this is gorgeous. We shared this too. Beautiful. The concept is so great. So they're a Jain philosophy, is that right? Yeah, see, we don't hear the music, but it's gorgeous visual. And the living space. What an amazing project.
Thank you. So I don't know if we have more time. I have a few other projects that I could share, but depending on time.
Well, maybe you could take another 5 if you want, and then we just do a few questions as you wish, or
Okay. I mean, this is the harmonic grid that we did in Nuanu. I also collaborated with Mayank, which is a geobiologist. So he did all these measurements. And I put here this slide. This is basically a geopathic stress documentary, which basically explains very well what these ley lines are and how they are created and how they can be measured with sensitive Earth magnetometers. My colleague Mayank has one of these devices, and he also uses the leisure antenna. So we created this is a bit of the explanation of how these vortices of energy are created. You have in many cases underwater veins. As water moves, creates charges. As those charges move like a current, they create also magnetic fields, and then where they cross, they create vortices. And this is what he explained me as well. There is different types of vortices. It can be centripetal, centrifugal. They can be right-handed or left-handed. And they have different qualities. They can be detrimental or beneficial. So we basically mapped them all and created a map of these power spots throughout the whole landscape. And then, so this is part of their presentation we give to Nuanu. This comes from the Brill Compendium by Jerry Basalatos. And he talks about a little bit of the energy qualities of these power spots, which is very poetic the way he described it. But I found this very interesting, the way
they call it the blind spring, or male and female centripetal or centrifugal. And we believe the word vril is essentially a term for projective longitudinal or directional longitudinal coherent EMF.
Right, that's where you tapped into the longitudinal array.
Exactly.
Right, where all this information is available to you. And this is, I guess, what he was describing here, right? It's like artists and scholars knew that it's difficult, know the difficulty they experience when working in specific locations. On the other hand, the given place allowed a greater degree of intellectual freedom than others. Indeed, there are those spaces permeating access in which ease of thought and ideation flow is possible.
Nice.
Ancient philosophers conducted these very basic and personal experiences with primary consciousness. Some realized that their thoughts and visions, visionary sense, could be traced to specific places, to ground points from which ideas seem to emanate. Numerous individuals reported to these sacred spots in search of magnified awareness. Knowledge of this psychotopology became codified in geomancy, and ancient science placed at the source of consciousness specific locacy. Physical place were equated with consciousness. Such locations, one could receive astonishing revelations, ideations, and visionary images with great frequency. So
that's
again,
right.
this is
the longitudinal node is essentially a DNA radio.
Right. So we map all these places, put it into a map. We actually worked for almost 10 days, running around with a buggy to every location, mapping all these lines and all these power spots. So these are the beneficial lines. These are detrimental. These are detrimental power spots. These are beneficial.
Right.
So, this is independent without the lines. These are different power spots.
Centripetal, centrifugal. Exactly. That's the issue.
Centripetal, centrifugal, up to 27 different spots we have. So this is the obelisk that we designed to create this harmonic grid, and it's basically a modern obelisk, I could say, instead of a rectilinear structure. It's an egg-shaped path curve geometry, and then it's also acting as a tuning fork, so you could actually ring it. And the way I think this works as well is like in architecture, so this vortex is basically emanating out of the earth. So if you put an egg or a container, then you have a resonator in which the energy can self re-enter, and then it can be accumulated and harmonized. So that's a little bit of the principle.
And Tony Rodriguez worked, he has a remote viewing school, and they've shown that the obelisk is definitely an antenna where remote viewing is much more possible. He also showed that there were very specific distances between the powerful obelisks and water. They're always at a very specific distance to the water, actually acting as a coupled antenna to the water nearby.
True. Imagine the effect of this grid, what we will do to the energy of the environment.
Yes,
I think will be profoundly regenerative in
it's
many
like
ways.
Earth acupuncture.
Earth acupuncture. This is what this is. And this is some schematics of the design. There's also this
so beautiful
sort of
very nice
sunflower phylotactic pattern all around. It's all very specific geometry. Some of the pictures.
The graphics are fabulous.
And this is a video. Maybe we can end up here.
So this is
the pie cam at the back.
Oh, I see. So there's the camp. I see. Wow. So this is in India, right?
No, here in Bali.
Oh, in
Part
Bali.
of Nuanu project.
Nuanu. I see. It's gorgeous. Wow. Really inspiring place. Totally impressive, Juan. Just gorgeous. Real antenna for life force. The pine cones are kissing noses.
Okay, so we have more projects, but I don't know if we are out of time.
Yeah, no, I think we should do some questions now. Juan,
let's get some questions.
That was fabulous. Juan and Josh, you guys are to be congratulated, really. And the quality of that work and the scale of that work and and we know that the economics is challenging, and you get a contract, and to estimate beforehand the costs and all the business challenges, very difficult, very difficult. So we are supportive for you guys, and this is also an ad for you guys to spread this work globally. It's wonderful. Well, fabulous.
Yeah.
So, Tufan, do you want to suggest any questions, shall we?
We did have 2 questions, and they were answered by Josh in the chat box. Other than those, we don't have any for the time being.
Do you want to just say what they were briefly, or?
Sure. So the first question was, do either of you use the Metatron cube when laying out an area? And Josh answered, depends on the geometry of design, that they do site assessment with dowsing, then choose exact building placement based on the optimal energetics. From there, laying out foundations is easy, he said. Another question from Michelle was, Josh, are your domes adaptable to temperature extremes, very hot 40 degrees Celsius summers to 0 degrees winter mornings? And the answer was very much so. We optimize ventilation and climate control, smaller spaces within for comfort and prevention of mold, mildew, and corrosion, fraud technology, linens, bed sheets, books, clothes, etc.
That's great.
These were all.
Yes, thank you for answering the questions, Josh. That's great. Juan, if we think about the difficulty of bringing this very simple idea that the building needs to be charge centripetal in order to make seeds or children grow, if we had the opportunity to set up a demo project at some architecture university that would then show their architecture students, very much like we did in Mexico City. We had 300 architecture students. So we make simple demonstration structures to show that literally directly the seed growth is the result of centripetal charge, I think that could be, we need more demo projects, I guess, and to influence universities. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think would be possible. Like we could print a scale model, or print, or well, I think we would be better to make it. In fact, just to do it with the proper materials, because I don't think that the electric constant of some of the printing filaments is optimal. Using something biological, so we could make a model, and I did these experiments in the past. Actually, when I came across your work, that's one of the first things I was doing. I was making sculptures and then doing seed germination experiments with them. And I could see results every time. It was just rare that I wouldn't see something happen, and this was just like very evident to me that was something was happening. So
you're one of the few people that actually did the work to show that we can cause a seed to grow. Hello. And by extension, to cause a child to grow. And why do architecture schools not know that? It's fundamental. And we should also point out that, the 3D printer adhesives and concrete, they all can be optimized to become dielectric. So, for example, we have a living cement project. There's even a living cement website that by removing the metal rebar and using basalt or bamboo or carbon fiber rebar, and then adding high dielectric material to the concrete mix, not unlike the high piezo rock powder is added to the biodynamic preparations. So you have high piezo and then you have high dielectric additions to both adhesives and concrete, so that basically your building material becomes capacitive and therefore allowing charge to breathe and charge to grow and implosion to happen. So it is a real electrical engineering skill to make life force. And the essential principle is exactly the ability to, quote, get centripetal or get dead.
Right. Just to comment to that as well, Dan, this is one of the things we did in one kitchen in Bali, actually in the kitchen of Akasha restaurant. And so I did this in the formwork. We put this aluminum foil in between the two sides of the concrete, and then we put an amplifier and basically ran your Sacred Sound software as the concrete was curing. And so that's another way of optimizing and enhancing the qualities of the concrete. And of course, we didn't put rebar in there. We were using bamboo.
Yes. Yes.
So
you could turn off your screen share so we can see your face better. Maybe Juan, if
okay.
Yeah, I would like to pin you your remove pin, restore pin. And what's beautiful then, and we actually did that in England, that by playing the piezo fire or implosive capacitance across the liquid material as it was crystallizing. So if you have a high dielectric semi-liquid like an adhesive or a concrete, and during the drying process, if you apply the implosive capacitance, it can be incredibly powerful. And that's a whole new field that we should develop. We could make, for example, containers in which to grow plants with implosive capacitance, cast living cement and living ceramics and make them implosive. So this is our new cottage industry, Juan. Exactly.
Yeah, and I just want to put input in there the possibility for mycology, for mycelium and fungal rhizome, for building materials, and also for research, because it's very easy to say take a specific strain of mushroom, clone 100 petri dishes of it for a control group, clone 100 petri dishes of the same exact one for the experimental group, and do so many different experiments, whether it's placing them in an implosive structure or adding a drop of implosive water to the experimental group. There's a massive amount of potential for mycological research. And I had a mushroom business for 4 years in North Carolina, so I know how to build the labs and all that. So that's something I'm very excited about.
Oh, that'd be a great demonstration. That's right. And so we have a whole series of technologies that are going to be coming out now, parallel to and synergetic to piezofire.com. for example, we'll have larger transducers and higher voltages. We can make this implosive field, and then we can implode capacitively the drying resins, ceramics, and concrete so that it's implosive. And then also you can, there's a new website, it's called firecrystal.com, that you can take the piezo fire and implode literally a fire crystal design. It's sort of the next step past Vogel crystal. And what the crystal then does is spit out a very strong directional longitudinal. And if you squirt that into water, that water becomes incredibly powerful for healing. It's incredible because water is the ideal receptor for projective longitudinal, which they sometimes call vril, but it's really the more correct term. So there's a whole series of parallel technologies that we should work on together here, because we're really, now that we understand what life force is, we can build that into our environment, into our clothing, into our concrete, into our architecture. So you guys are pioneers, and we're delighted to work with you. And we honor the incredible work you guys have done so far. So any final closing thoughts there, Juan? Or
maybe I share, like, in this regard, what we're talking about. I read the books of anesthesia, the ringing cedars.
Oh, yes.
And there is a very interesting part in there where they talk about this jewelry that they make with these ringing cedars, which is basically a tree. So they say, like, the tree at some point begins to ring when it's very old. And then so you basically saturate it with capacitive charge. And they explain, like, if you actually cut a little branch of this tree, there will be like a little plasma coming out of the branch. And then so they basically, the tree, they say that it's actually calling the humans because it wants to be cut before it dies, so it can be used for service. And then so people will cut it, and then they will make these little jewelries with it. And then the jewelry is just a piece of wood, which, I like to say, because a lot of people are thinking about crystals. Crystals are, is the best, they have all this energy. I think sometimes biological materials can be so much more interesting. And this is what they are describing. This jewelry, effectively, if you wear it, it makes you more vital, it makes you stronger, it makes you feel more calm. And so it's all described in the book. So I will say that this is a very extreme case of a super high or hyper sort of dielectric constant, or it's also, I think, is like an electret.
Yes. Yes,
an electret is basically solidified in the presence of an electric field. So this is what happened in the tree in the order of sometimes hundreds of years. And this is connected to the Schumann harmonics, cosmic energies. And then so it creates this incredibly beautiful fractal organic electret. Then if you wear it, it gives you longevity. And then so I think this is a very interesting clue as well there, Dan.
It's gorgeous.
We can look at.
Because the molecular geometry of the wood itself gets finer and finer grain structure until eventually it's literally an implosive capacitor and literally a ringing cedar. It's beautiful. And and Valerie was also telling me that if you find an old tree and really sort of you make love to the tree, I mean, you embed in the tree, and then you visualize that tree is naturally designed to repair your immune system. And as you bond to that tree, eventually you can visualize that tree anytime you know that your aura or your immune system need repair, and the tree will actually form that connection to you at a distance and literally adopt the tree. And they showed actually this for COVID and vax injuries and many things like that this was actually a practical way to fix your aura, was to bond to the tree and then visualize the tree at a distance. And basically you're praying to that tree, but the tree is acting as the implosive capacitor to the array, as we say, literally a ringing cedar. I think it was Anastasia also said that you put the seed in your mouth and it's embedded in your implosive saliva, and then the seed grows better. I mean, those are beautiful insights from Russia, the Anastasia School for Kids. What a dream. Very good point there, Juan. Very good. I love it. And the Ark of the Covenant, the cedar wood in the Ark of the Covenant, or the acacia wood in the Ark of the Covenant, was a super fine grain, super dielectric, alternatively layered with a thin film gold, which is how it became the implosive capacitor, which then did, in fact, practically reduce radioactivity measurably. Hint, centripetal charge. Not only is it the definition of life, it's the opposite of radioactivity. Hint, healing nuclear problems. The Ark was originally designed to contain the nukes. Well, what does that mean? When Kathy measured reduced nuclear critical mass at the magnetic line crosspoints, all this is about longitudinal nodes, the centripetal force. So it's a beautiful science to be continued. But the point for here is that Juan Schlosser and Josh Geiger, thank you so much for your work today, for your beautiful slides, for getting up at the early hour, and for inspiring us. Maybe just say again the websites and the contact info if you want to, Juan. And
yes, so we are at bioarc.co.co. And then if you go to the website, you can also find you can basically write us an email, and we can we provide architectural services, architectural design services for projects and stuff. So we're very welcome anyone who would like to reach out to us, and we can design for you and keep spreading the biological architecture curriculum into the world. We would love to do that.
And Juan is the expert. And Juan and Josh are both well represented at bioarchitects.net, where we have the global network of architects working on this, including Arturo and friends who presented just a couple of weeks ago. So thank you again, guys. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
We have a last question. David asks, his friend Anthony Hernandez and him were wondering if you have ever explored the possibility of partnering the implications of biologic architecture with Vastu companies like maharishivastu.org. He says, I am currently at the Maharishi International University with Anthony Hernandez, friend of Dan, and if introduced in the right way, I have a good feeling they would be open to explore adding this into the already existing structure of their coursework, he says.
Nice. So that's maharishivastu.org. And actually, Juan just mentioned the Vastu connection to his projects already. So that sounds like a beautiful and useful connection that Juan is already working with Vastu, right? And the organizations there.
That's right. My partner is Vastu World. Yeah. So he's also a Vastu expert, and we learn a lot from each other. He's going to come the next month, and we'll really like to hang out and have this conversation. So he's also spreading the biological architecture curriculum in India, and he's we inspire each other very much. So we work together in multiple projects. He's very much into biological architecture, and he would love to have the conversations where we actually try to find the connections and try to explain some of the scientific principles of Vastu with more technical language. I think that's a very interesting conversation that we can develop. We definitely could contact this university, and I would love to bring Mayank on this and into all of this, because he's already in India, and it's all a possibility. Absolutely.
So have your friend Anthony contact Juan, maharishivastu.org. They already have a big Vastu organization. It's really very simple. Feng Shui or Vastu say that a right angle is evil. What they meant was that destructive capacitive interference, actually, whereas curvature that allows capacitance to converge constructively is not evil. So it's very simple. The concepts of, whether it's astrology or Vastu or Feng Shui, was an ancient way of talking about constructive charge interference. And that constructive charge interference getting centripetal is the nature of life. So when we bring physics to Vastu and Feng Shui, suddenly it becomes teachable and more powerful, and we may eventually not have to live in these steel buildings that are quashing the souls of the kids. Oh dear. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for coming. Let's spread the message. Biologic architecture, bioarchitects.net, bioarchitect.co, bioarch.co. Let's spread the message. It's a beautiful living message. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Dan.
Blessings.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Bye.
Dan. Thank
This
you.
has been fun. Let's share the word. Thank you. Thank you. Blessing.
Awesome.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you so much, Dan.
Thank you so
more-
much.